Sydney celebrates a new century. Massive crowds flood the city, but no major transport or crime problems. And the Y2K bug proves it doesn't have any bite. Good evening, I'm Peter Overton and welcome to this first National 9 News of the 21st century, a special 1-hour edition. Also tonight, New Year's Eve celebrations around the world, including London. Paris. New York. And Delhi. But Sydney set a standard for the rest of the world to follow. Last night's celebrations a magnificent welcome to a new year and a new century.
Even for those who forgot their watches, the new Millennium was unmistakable. On the stroke of midnight, Sydney exploded in celebration. January the 1st, the year 2000. Stretching 6 kilometres either side of the bridge, the largest fireworks display in Australia's history. Choreographed to an at times bizarre techno rap of music from the last 1,000 years. Crammed shoulder to shoulder around the Opera House, gazing skyward from more than 6,000 boats, in all more than 1 million spilling around the harbour, farewelling the last year, the last century, welcoming in a new age. Aside from some minor injuries from falls and drunkenness, the two mostly related, the police on standby in such numbers found themselves surrounded by a noisy but generally affectionate crowd. Earlier in the night, a smaller than usual 9 o'clock fireworks, mainly for families and those who wouldn't last till the main event. Even then, though, some weren't thrilled by what they saw. It was just a taste of what was to come. On the water, the dazzling flotilla of Chinese lanterns danced for the crowd. There was plenty of other entertainment too to pass the hours until the real show, when at midnight the fuse was lit on 20 tonnes of pyrotechnics, $5 million worth, painting the skies for nearly 30 minutes. Several Sydney landmarks played their part in the show, but there was really only one star of the night, an icon through much of the century just past, a coat hanger dressed on this special occasion in the most stunning evening wear at the party. Daniel Blyde, National 9 News.
The Harbour Party was a triumph for the organisers. More than 1 million people crammed into the city, yet only 11 arrests, and they were minor incidents. And those fears over transport problems were unfounded, with most of the revellers finding their way home without any major problems.
From all points, the trains rolled in. Circular Quay was the favourite destination, tens of thousands pouring through the station, only easing at dusk just before 9. There was no doubt the crowds were packed in, but they moved. Further back along the line at Wynyard Station, things were a little more congested.
That owing to severe congestion at Circular Quay, it's in your best interest if you go by the George Street exit and walk to Circular Quay.
And they did gladly. The CBD was a car-free zone. The moving crowd a bonus for Police Commissioner Peter Overton. But for some, high spirits soured when crowds on the eastern side of Circular Quay became unbearable just before the first fireworks show. As more and more moved down Macquarie Street and just as many piled in from the Harbourside Promenade, a crush developed in the middle near the closed Opera House entrance.
We're moving them out, there's a crush on.
Police had no choice but to relieve the pressure, forcibly splitting the crowd and moving them back. It was quick, necessary action that won few friends.
Incredibly heavy-handed. The only time I've seen behaviour like this is at an English soccer match.
I honestly cannot believe that. I cannot believe what they did.
But less than an hour later, between the new key apartments, another serious jam. 2 girls fainted, a fight broke out, families were pinned in the middle, police forced to open a locked gate.
There's people fainting down there. There's bodies on top of bodies of people who've just fainted. Everyone is just pushing.
Add that to this crew who turned a bus into a dance floor. Plus the standard drunken brawls, and it kept police and paramedics busy. All this before the main show had begun. In all, numbers were slightly down on estimates, just over 1 million spectators and only 11 arrests.
I would like to thank everybody for their patience on the evening. We'd particularly like to thank the revellers for their good spirits.
It was only after that stroke of midnight, however, that the crowds around Sydney Harbour took a breather and enjoyed the fireworks show for about half an hour, giving police and the public transport system a short break. However, despite all hopes that the crowd would stick around to ease the load on trains and buses, they didn't, but that didn't seem to matter. For Sydney's biggest transport challenge, a first. It all worked. From Circular Quay to Wynyard, thousands were moved in minutes. A tight fit also on the Northern Line at Milson's Point, but it flowed, although they waited a little longer at Central Station. There were so many buses, seats went begging. This newfound efficiency and a $5 flagfall robbing taxis of bumper trade.
Normal Friday night's much busier than today.
We're doing nothing actually, we're just sitting in the ranks. There's not much work.
Meanwhile, in the Rocks, police made a clean sweep of hungover hangers-on. The entire operation was coordinated for the first time through the new Traffic Management Centre.
Came through with absolute flying colours.
But they know there's still 9 months to refine the network for the sustained 2-week test of the Olympics this September.
We're a tired but happy government today because last night was by any test a great success.
Michael Usher, National 9 News.
The celebrations west of the city were low-key in comparison, but spirits were just as high. A family theme in Parramatta where the stars of the show were plucked from the crowd. Campbelltown's concert had a similar sparkle and the good times just kept rolling. Despite big crowds at both events, police say there was little trouble. And Australia's most famous beach was the venue for a giant dance party, which was out of this world. The countdown, the only thing that could stop the music. The pace only picked up from there, the 16,000 ravers still jumping for joy well after the fireworks had fizzled. Here in Sydney, we find it a little hard to believe, but yes, the rest of Australia also celebrates New Year's Eve. Melbourne also featured fireworks while taking time out for a pot shot at our Harbour Light Show.
The southern capital wasn't about to be upstaged, especially by Sydney. So, in front of 350,000 people lining the Yarra, it laid on its own version of Sydney's giant sea creatures. If Melbourne meant to mock, things backfired.
The grubber boat.
Don't you challenge a man with a giant cicada on his roof.
Good God.
The crowd was left largely speechless as grubs, penguins and red things on rubber tyres floated by.
In a word, disappointing. In another word, no, that would be kind of harsh.
But like almost everywhere else, the fireworks saved the night. 20 minutes of spectacle that made everyone feel good. On the other side of the continent, the biggest attraction was the last sunset of the Millennium. Then the people of Perth got stuck into it. But as with everywhere else in the nation, it was all fairly subdued. In Broken Hill, they celebrated as they always do, the traditional New Year's Eve single-wheeled barrow race up and down the Silver City's main street.
What can I say? We won.
Out in even more remote Cooperpedy, everybody was a winner as midnight chimed in. Everybody, that is, except the commentator, lost in the crowd.
Happy New Millennium, everyone!
Also, half an hour later than most of the East Coast, Adelaide celebrated with fireworks exploding from the top of city buildings. Although sparks meant the inevitable. Fire crews, though, had it quickly under control. Far to the north, Darwin's tropical farewell to the old and welcome to the new. As far away from the heat as you can get, a plane load of Australians saw the new year in high over Antarctica. They were also flying high in Hobart.
Happy New Year, everybody! Hey, have a bit of helium!
Fancy dress and funny hats were all the rage. On the Queensland-New South Wales border, a rare chance for two celebrations. First, south of the Tweed, then, an hour later, you could do it all again. In Brisbane, they more than made up for any lost time. The heart of the city was packed all through the night. And then it all came to an end. But only until the next century rolls around. Peter Harvey, National 9 News.
Dawn in Sydney today was something of a fizzer. Because of that apparently ever-present cloud, nobody saw the sunrise. For one young lady, that didn't matter one little bit. For her, first light meant a special place on the world stage.
After all the shouts, the cheers and all the noises, a simple but entrancing melody by 12-year-old Eleanor Baroni, perched high on the Opera House, signalled first light. A multilingual song beamed to the world, a song about dawn. Weather-wise in Sydney, there was nothing remarkable about this well-anticipated daybreak. Plenty of cloud, but no sunrise to see or speak of. Along the coastline, people still waited for light in whatever form.
We were expecting warm weather and it's just not happening.
For the record, it was actually like a cold winter's morning, but that didn't really matter to those who ventured out. For many, seeing the first daylight of 2000 was just as important as the midnight celebrations.
Even if the sun doesn't come up, it's worth it.
We used to watch Beyond 2000 when we were 10 years old and used to think, my goodness me, how far away is 2000? And here we are.
As the day matured, evidence of a long and hard night's play was revealed. Like elite squads, teams of cleaners took to the streets and parks at the Rocks and Mrs Macquarie's Point amongst the messiest locations. On the North Shore, cleaners moved more than 20 tonnes of rubbish from Cremorne Point, Kirribilli and the Blues Point Reserve alone. And out for the count everywhere, seedy, sleep-deprived revellers, many with a head-throbbing price to pay.
Happy New Year, mate. Excuse me, sir.
Others woke and reminisced.
It was the greatest experience of our lives.
And for some, today was just another excuse to party on.
No, you're stopping. You know, if you can drink for a whole millennium, you're doing pretty good.
On the same wavelength, thousands of revellers at Bondi, many of them tourists. Nervous lifeguards ordered overzealous ones from the water, but there were no major incidents. Manly Beach, another popular daybreak party zone, was also incident-free. At this city pub, perhaps the most popular party sustainer of all, why count down only once?
Happy New Year to Madagascar, Iran and Iraq!
Some will never know how they do it.
Welcome to the new century, man. Mark, National Parks, man.
Yeah, there you are.
Good, man. Happy New Year, Australia.
Happy New Year, Sydney!
Matthew Watson, National 9 News.
It may have been all systems go in Sydney overnight, but there were signs of a hangover in the old town today. Those party animals were out and about, but everything was done at a slow pace.
For many, sleeping off the sins of the last century was the first task for 2000. The beach, a popular place to dump what was left of 1999. The whole city, it seemed, shut down. Even by midday, areas that were packed with revellers just 12 hours earlier were almost completely deserted, most preferring a quiet beginning to the 21st century.
We're just having a lazy day today.
This morning we were down about 10 o'clock. It was like a ghost town.
But not everyone got off to a late start. Hundreds of stamp collectors descending on the GPO bright and early this morning to lay claim to the first stamp issue for 2000.
We set the alarm to get up.
just to make sure.
I think it's very limited edition and they should be valuable in the future.
By early afternoon, Sydney had finally surfaced, thousands stepping out to see the same city through the eyes of a new century.
It's a bit strange picking the paper up this morning and seeing January the 1st, 2000 on it.
While a few die-hard revellers continue to party, others preferred to lounge around outdoors, hitting the golf course, many families flocking to Darling Harbour. Finally, there were those who spent the day on the beach. What the future holds for Sydney this coming year, clearly still an open book. Christine Spiteri, National 9 News.
It didn't take long for Australia's first baby of the century to be born. Bodie J. Ella waiting just long enough to make the record books. He was delivered in Wollongong only 20 seconds into the new year.
I didn't think he'd come this early.
And this Sydney couple will have no excuse for forgetting their wedding anniversary. Steve and Penny Shemester among the first to be married in the 21st century. Still ahead in our special New Century Bulletin, the Y2K bug proves a Millennium fizzer. And farewell to the 1900s, New York style.
Where can you see Sylvester Stallone, Drew Barrymore, a chimp with a visa, Kim Basinger, Susan Sarandon, two idiots dancing, Brooke Shields and a cat with a problem, all in one show? The best commercials you've never seen, 9:30 tonight.
Time to get back into your local Mazda dealer with a massive 99 rewind sale. There are huge savings on all Mazdas while stocks last. So don't just stand there.
Until Sunday at Target, we're dropping the mark price of all men's, ladies and kids' clothes by a massive 25%. That's right, 25% off every stitch of clothing. So, see you at Target.
Oz Design are taking a load off during their $10 million furniture sale. Every single item reduced, no exceptions. Hurry!
Connect long distance within Australia for longer with new Optus Free Time. Call any time within Australia at our low per minute rates, and as soon as the cost reaches $3, the rest of your call is free. That's the power of yes.
Nick Nolte, Shaquille O'Neal, Mary McDonnell.
Please try not to step on the children.
And Ed O'Neill.
Paid for him, baby. I can smell it.
In the outrageous slam dunk premiere, Blue Chips, 8:30 Sunday on 9.
Now to that Y2K bug, and so far so good. Even Russia's nuclear plants and missiles appear to have passed the crucial test. If anything was to go wrong, it most likely would have happened first in New Zealand or Australia. But it seems we've come through unscathed.
The main control room at Energy Australia, and technicians hold their breath as the clocks roll into the year 2000. Despite concerns the Millennium bug could take us back to the dark ages, the lights stayed on and Sydney powered into a new century.
No problems at all. No, that's great.
The year 2000 was barely minutes old when officials here at Energy Australia began telling other distributors around the world that it was turning into a bug-free night. What happened in this room was regarded as a test case for electricity suppliers in the United States and Europe. The banks who spent millions ensuring their computers could read the year 2000 declared the bug had been beaten.
The good news was relayed to the Reserve Bank, but the Governor thought he'd better make his own checks in the early hours.
The lights didn't go out, the telephones continued to operate. We ourselves did some spot checks, went down and tried the ATMs, and they were still operating and still giving records of accounts.
All the big companies, BHP, Qantas and Telstra, declared no major glitches. Flying through midnight from LA, this Air New Zealand plane that landed at Sydney early this morning.
I slept through it.
Did you?
Slept through the Millennium there. Woke up and the plane was still flying, so I was happy.
But it was a white-knuckle ride for at least one passenger.
Terrified, absolutely terrified, but the staff were really good and they were very supportive and told us that if anything happened, it would happen after we got here.
By dawn, most major businesses had reported into the National Y2K Centre in Canberra.
Australia has passed through the date change in a business-as-usual fashion.
And Microsoft here in Australia fielded just 3 calls in the 12 hours after midnight. Its Y2K manager, Lance Smith, is more worried about year 2000 viruses.
If people have email and they receive attachments, if they don't know where they're from, my recommendation is delete them.
Not only were most Australian computers bug-free, the federal government is celebrating that its Y2K website set a new world record. Such was the huge interest here, it received 3 million hits in just 7 hours. Mark Burrows, National 9 News.
Time marches on to a cheerful tune. New York City still in the grip of celebrations after its midnight came a little over 2 hours ago. Standing at the so-called crossroads of the world, 9 News reporter Nick McCallum.
Well, Peter, it's now 2:20 a.m. here in New York and the party is still raging. It's been a non-stop celebration for the past 20 hours. This after officials tried to ensure the city was terrorist-proof.
A massive police operation focused on Times Square. More than 8,000 officers because of threats of terrorism. They pounced on any transgressors. This man tried to get through a barrier without a security pass. A member of the Nobel Prize-winning Doctors Without Borders pressed the button for what New Yorkers claim is the ultimate Millennium event, the dropping of the Times Square ball. This year made of Waterford crystal, it looked as though it exploded when the massive fireworks display erupted at midnight. Despite the terrorism fear, it's estimated almost 500,000 people crammed into the square itself. A further 1.5 million in surrounding streets, including some raucous Aussies.
It was all worth waiting for. 11 hours in the miserable cold, bored out of my brains at the start, but it's all worth it!
This is the culmination of a day-long celebration, costing $11 million and billed as the greatest show on earth.
Since early morning here, as different parts of the world hit midnight, there was a parade. Australia's turn was marked by stick puppets, kangaroos, koalas, crocodiles and flying foam boomerangs. It came at 9 a.m, actually an hour after midnight in Sydney and Melbourne. But still, they pretended here, with a countdown and celebrations down under on the big screen. Good enough for Aussies in the crowd.
Very homesick, yeah. When I saw that pregnant goanna walk past, mate, it was fantastic. It was amazing.
And among those carrying that pregnant goanna, it was supposed to be a turtle, a fellow Australian.
Yeah, it was very exciting. Glad to be holding on to part of Australia here in New York City.
New York was the party epicentre in America, a giant baby time puppet symbolising the dawn of the new millennium. But in Washington, President Clinton saw in the new year at an outdoor concert near the White House. And so far, throughout the United States, there's been no sign of the feared terrorism.
And it's a long way from over. The party will continue here until the last time zone in the world hits midnight, Peter.
Well, so who's the lucky last then, Mick?
Well, the people of French Polynesia and Western Samoa in the Pacific still have another 3.5 hours to go in the 20th century.
Nick McCallum in New York. In New Zealand, celebrations focused on Gisborne, the first city in the world to see the sun's rays in the new century. Despite overcast conditions, enough light broke through to provide a golden backdrop for Dame Kiri Takanawa's dawn performance. Hundreds of Maori warriors then stormed the beach to mark the event. Dawn celebrations were also held in Auckland, but the sun first hit New Zealand soil 800 kilometres to the east, on the Chatham Islands. There, a local couple tied the knot at midnight in the world's first marriage of the millennium. And about 14 hours later, on the other side of the globe, the clock struck 12 in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro laying on one of the planet's biggest parties. Around 3 million people packed Copacabana Beach, thousands of fireworks exploding over the famous stretch of sand as the crowd throbbed to the sounds of samba music from 20 different stages. Continuing our special New Year's coverage after the break, our soldiers celebrating in East Timor. And London lets its hair down for the new century.
Monday on A Current Affair, Russian roulette in the trucking game.
Scares the living daylights out of me.
Drivers risking their lives and yours.
If they don't stop it, a lot of people are going to get hurt.
Now truckies blow the whistle on a scandal.
There would not be one driver that has not broken the law.
And there's no way they can catch it.
Plus inside cricket's commentary box.
Concentration is absolutely fierce.
And what you never get to see.
I couldn't believe how noisy it was.
And Darren Beedman, back in the saddle, when Nissan presents A Current Affair.
I'm quite surprised not to see Malcolm here in person.
He's been missing for a while now. Hey, it's Carter at the office.
So you don't know where he is?
I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't now. I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't now. So good, I got you.
It's really quite a shocking ordeal.
Shock. 40-wing shock stock take sale is on now. Save 10, 20, 30, 40%, even up to 50%. At 40-wing stock take sale, save up to 50%.
Wink. Shock, 40 wings.
It's Lincraft up to 70% off clearance. Store-wide savings on fabrics, home furnishings, craft and haberdashery. Now on. Lincraft up to 70% off clearance. You'll be wrapped.
Beautiful Lincraft sale.
Don't miss the NZ sale. Call 13 17 67 or your travel agent.
The January sale on now at Nick Scali Furniture, Auburn, Chatswood, Caringbah, Tuggerah and Moore Park.
I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't now. So good, I got you.
There was cause for a double celebration in Dili, not only a welcome to the year 2000, but for the first time in 24 years, the East Timorese could rejoice their freedom from Indonesia. The Australian troops also found time to party in a traditional Aussie way.
The new year in the world's newest nation. For our troops in East Timor, it was a time to let their hair down. But with the responsibility of maintaining security, the forces here could not afford to be complacent, increasing patrols for the night. Those lucky enough to be off duty did enjoy an extra beer at the army canteen. Their usual ration of 2 cans increased to 3. Although a long way from home, the troops here in East Timor celebrated the new year in the only way they know how. Meanwhile, Interfet's top brass saw in the new year at the military's recreation centre. Choosing a distinctly Hawaiian flavour, they enjoyed their beers while dabbling at a makeshift casino.
Place your money down, you're betting where the dice turn up.
And there was a common theme to the New Year's resolutions.
To get home safe and to be with the kids again.
Meanwhile, peacekeeping leader General Peter Cosgrove took time out to watch the Sydney fireworks spectacular via satellite.
I wish I was there. It's great.
Out to sea, off the enclave of Akuzi, the East Timorese were treated to a fireworks spectacular of their own, courtesy of the crew of the frigate HMAS Newcastle. And for our airmen and women, a more traditional celebration, a beachside bonfire. After attending a special New Year's Mass, thousands of East Timorese flocked to an outdoor celebration hosted by the United Nations. East Timorese leader Janana Guzmão making a brief appearance. As the clock approached midnight, Interfet's high command showed up, the general the target of some special attention.
I think every night of freedom's an important night. This is a special night. It's the start of a new millennium, the start of a new freedom, new life for East Timorese.
For the Aussie troops here, the year 2000 means another countdown, this one to when they head home. In Dili, Simon Boda, National 9 News.
Around the world these days, the major cities are locked in an unofficial battle to provide the most outstanding New Year's Eve show. London isn't normally in the race, but this year made a special effort to give Sydney's title a shake.
A moment in history, a moment in time. Britain entered the 21st century with a bang. A so-called river of fire exploding along the Thames. What followed was billed as the world's biggest and longest fireworks display, designed by an Australian team to rival Sydney's. 40,000 fireworks set off at a rate of 45 every second, lighting up familiar landmarks across central London. Stunning to most, deafening to some. Another superlative, with the Queen lighting the world's biggest beacon. It proved a little stubborn, but was eventually set ablaze to form the central link in a chain of beacons along the river. The focus of the nation's celebration was Greenwich, home of world time and site of the world's biggest dome. Finished only just in time for London's party of the century. A landmark for the 21st century, this is the country's new pride and joy. Children ushered in the new and farewell the millennium past. It was the signal for a song and dance spectacular. Tony Blair fired laser beams to turn the world's biggest Ferris wheel, but yesterday's safety scare meant passengers were banned. For Aussies among the 3 million revellers, different impressions to take home.
It's been fantastic. London's surpassed all my expectations.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. And here we are in London. It's going to rain and it's going to be typical English night. Hi to everyone at home. Have a great new year.
Shortly into the new millennium, the party was over. For so many, it meant so much. Memories of a time in history they'll never forget. Lane Calcutt, National 9 News.
In Scotland, New Year is a very big deal. There it's called Hogmanay, and in the capital, Edinburgh, it was celebrated in force. Tons of fireworks set off from Edinburgh Castle as hundreds of thousands partied in the streets. The Hogmanay tradition dates back to the 1500s from a Protestant push to make the new year bigger than Christmas. Across Europe, they danced the night away, the city of Paris turning on a glittering fireworks display watched by more than 1 million people. Nine's Damien Ryan is there to tell us how it went.
Yes, it's the morning after the night before here in the French capital, and while the streets are generally quiet now, it was a much different story 8 hours ago when the clock ticked down to midnight.
That most famous of Paris landmarks was the centrepiece of the city's celebrations. Mountain climbers had installed 20,000 flashbulbs on the tower's frame. Then came spectacular fireworks, cascading down like shooting stars.
Less than a week ago, the city of Paris was hardly in the party mood, battered by the worst storms on record. But as the 20th century is now history, so too for tonight at least to the hardships as Parisians celebrate the future.
From the Eiffel Tower, the lights and the party moved to the Champs-Élysées, where giant Ferris wheels had transformed the avenue into a fairground for the night. In Berlin, 1 million people gathered at the Brandenburg Gate, symbol of the country's struggles throughout the last century. This was Spain, where they packed Madrid's Central Plaza to see in the 21st century. And in Moscow's Red Square, champagne and vodka helped the crowds brave sub-zero temperatures for the dawning of a new age. From his window in the Vatican, the Pope delivered the first blessing of the new millennium.
Inizia in questo momento l'anno 2000.
Amid the celebrations, the Pontiff reminded the faithful that this was above all a day to remember the 2,000 years since the birth of Christ.
Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
It's been a quiet night right across Europe, but despite those spectacular fireworks here in Paris, there was one major hitch. For the past 2.5 years, a clock on the Eiffel Tower has been counting down the big moment, but with just 5 hours to go, the clock failed and couldn't be fixed. Apparently, it wasn't a Y2K problem, but those storms, which have left more than 500,000 homes in Paris still without power. Back to you, Peter.
Damien Ryan in Paris. And peace was the theme of Millennium celebrations at the birthplace of Christ. 2,000 doves released at the stroke of midnight in Bethlehem. Manger Square was only packed with locals, fears of a terrorist attack keeping tourists away. But tight security in the West Bank town ensured the only explosions came from the fireworks. And in other news after the break, the Indian Airlines hostage crisis ends. And the resignation of Russian President Boris Yeltsin.
I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I've just had enough.
A true-life adventure of survival against the odds. The Castaways premieres 7:30 Sunday on Channel 9.
At IKEA, we're suffering from the Millennium bug. And the only cure is to sell off last century's stock at fly-by-night prices. The IKEA clearance. With up to 50% off, it's Swedish for value.
It's on at Homebush, the biggest home improvement sale. At By Design, save 30% on our complete Four Seasons kitchen range. This month at By Design. On sale now, Homebush Home Improvement Centre.
All over this country, one name is source. The flooring of quality, it's Carpet Court.
Save on floor coverings right now at Carpet Court's Save of the Century. Save on Australia's biggest range of styles and colours. Save on top brands from the world's leading manufacturers. Save on a huge selection of timbers, vinyls and laminates. Save with interest-free terms at Carpet Court's Save of the Century. Call 13 20 64 for your local Carpet Court store.
Can you tell the difference between this beach and this beach? Can you see a rip forming as conditions change? Can you tell the depth of the water, or what's underneath, or where the channels are? If you don't know how to read a beach, then you should ask someone who does, before you enter the water. Ask an expert. Ask a lifesaver. It might save one life this summer. Yours.
Happy New Year, Brocky.
Happy New Holden, Deborah. Holden dealers are celebrating being #1 with their 99 stock clearance. 99 plate Holden Ute with free air and factory bonus.
$1,000 factory bonuses on all 99 plate Jackaroo.
And factory bonuses on 99 plate Rodeos.
So make the most of the 99 stock clearance and have a happy new Holden.
At your #1 Holden dealer now.
Travelland's summer airfare sale is on. And right now you can fly Ansett Australia to Melbourne, Brisbane or the Gold Coast from just $189. So call Travelland 132 002.
At IKEA, we're suffering from the Millennium bug. And the only cure is to sell off last century's stock at fly-by-night prices. The IKEA clearance. With up to 50% off its Swedish for value.
ER returning in 2000 to Channel 9.
To other news now, and the state's road toll continues to climb with 2 more fatalities, lifting the holiday tally to 15. Around the country, 48 have now been killed, the death of 3 young people in a crash near Uluru, the first deaths in the Northern Territory. Of course, there's been other major news around the world. In Afghanistan overnight, that hijacking crisis ended. Muslim militants releasing the 160 people they held hostage on board an Indian Airlines plane for 8 days. Australian businessman Peter Ward is said to be in good health. Other freed captives say the hijackers were murderers who used violence and threats to subdue the hostages.
It was a bizarre sight. 5 hijackers stepped onto the tarmac brandishing pistols, then sped off into the night with 3 Kashmiri militants, freed just hours earlier from Indian jails. It was India's foreign minister who personally delivered the militants to the hijackers.
Innocent men, women and children have been criminally kept confined.
The price of freedom for 160 passengers who'd spent 8 days of terror aboard the Indian Airlines plane, commandeered in Nepal on Christmas Eve. 36-year-old Australian banker Peter Ward was among the hostages reunited with friends and family in New Delhi late last night. Exhausted, dirty, overwhelmed at the sheer relief of being alive.
We have lived through a living hell. We saw death at 8 times. We not only suffered misery, we suffered psychological warfare by the terrorists.
We are okay. We are happy to be back home.
Horrific stories are now emerging about the ordeal. Passengers say they were kept on meagre rations and for the first 4 days remained blindfolded with their heads down.
24-hour gunpoint, without any food, without any meal, without anything.
They also claim when negotiations had reached a deadlock, the hijackers had been on the verge of killing them all. Deborah Cornwall, National 9 News.
Care Australia was celebrating for a different reason last night, with Slobodan Milosevic granting clemency to Serb aid worker Branko Yellen. He was jailed with Australians Peter Wallace and Steve Pratt 9 months ago for alleged espionage during the Kosovo War, but had to wait nearly twice as long to be released.
The news of Branko's release has been a long time coming. It's something that's been playing heavily at the forefront of my mind now for something like four odd months, and I'm ecstatic.
He's been granted residency in Australia and, after undergoing counselling, will move here with his family. Having made his stamp on the 20th century, Boris Yeltsin has suddenly called it quits as the president of Russia. Prime Minister Vladimir Putin has taken over as caretaker president, while Yeltsin, at 68, becomes the very first modern Russian leader not to be toppled or die at his post.
Wiping away a tear, Russia's master of the unexpected stunned the world by stepping down 6 months before his term expired. as he handed over the briefcase containing Russia's nuclear launch codes. The departure of the ailing, erratic, but larger-than-life figure was greeted more with relief than anxiety. Russia must enter the new millennium with new politicians, he said in his familiar slow drawl. New faces, new smart, strong, energetic people. In his place as acting president, the colourless former KGB chief Vladimir Putin is expected to provide continuity. His proudest political moment came in '91, when, standing on top of a tank, he led opposition to an attempted communist coup to restore the Soviet Union. But in '93, he tarnished his democratic credentials when he used force to put down another coup attempt by parliamentarians. Leaving his office for the last time, he asked Russians to forgive him for his failures. Whether the people of this impoverished former world power will do so is highly debatable. Mark Webster, National 9 News.
Ken with Sporters next, and the SCG guessing game.
I think Brett Lee is licking his lips, Peter. We've got that. Also, one of the greats to straighten out Shoaib Akhtar's bowling problem. And an old cap for the new Century Test.
Monday on A Current Affair, Russian roulette in the trucking game.
Scares the living daylights out of me.
Drivers risking their lives and yours.
If they don't stop it, a lot of people are going to get hurt.
Now truckies blow the whistle on a scandal.
There would not be one driver that has not broken the law.
And there's no way they can catch it.
Plus inside cricket's commentary box.
Concentration is absolutely fierce.
And what you never get to see.
I couldn't believe how noisy it was.
And Darren Beedman, back in the saddle, when Nissan presents A Current Affair.
Travelland's summer airfare sale is on. And right now you can fly Ansett Australia to Melbourne, Brisbane or the Gold Coast from just $189. So call Travelland 132002.
Shock, shock. 40-wing Shock stock take sale is on now. Save 10, 20, 30, 40%, even up to 50%. At 40-wing stock take sale, save up to 50%.
Wink, wink. Shock, shock, 40 wings.
Imagine a washing machine so advanced it can buy its own washing powder. Using hypercybernetics, your Fisher & Paykel Intuitive contacts base to order its own high-performance detergent, which is then delivered straight to your laundry. Alas, that technology is still being fine-tuned, but the detergent is already here. Omo High Performance, the only detergent recommended by Fisher & Paykel for outstanding results now and in the future. Currently, it's out in the shops.
Persian Carpet Gallery, Australia's biggest carpet dealers, are overstocked. Over 20,000 pieces from Persia, Turkey, Afghanistan and the Orient in all sizes must be cleared. So prices have been slashed from 30 to a massive 60%. Come and get a bargain today at Supercentre Moore Park, 352 Kent Street, the City, 177 Parramatta Road, Auburn, 75 Pacific Highway, Waitara and Supercentre Castle Hill. Persian Carpet Gallery, a world of difference.
Vitamin E has always cared for your skin. Now Organics shampoo and conditioner enriched with vitamin E moisturises and revitalises your hair. Organics with vitamin E. Care for your hair as you care for your skin.
John Cootes Furniture is delighted to offer 12 months interest-free terms on the biggest display of value-for-money furniture and bedding in Sydney. That's no deposit, no interest and no repayments for 12 months. Some conditions apply to approved applicants, but only at John Cootes Furniture, Marylands and Penrith.
Happy New Year, Brocky.
Happy New Holden, Deborah. It's Holden's 99 stock clearance.
Olympic Edition Vectra. Free air, CD, alloys.
From $24,990.
At your number one Holden dealer now.
The third test between Australia and India starts tomorrow on the Sydney Cricket Ground wicket that looks as though it's had surgery. Not so long ago, the home of spin bowlers, this SCG strip looks like it was built for speed.
Getting the grass on how the wicket will play was the first task for the skipper. It may be Steve Waugh's home turf, but he's never seen it like this. No signs of a traditional spinner's track. Instead, a green top ripe for pace bowlers.
It's not like a Sydney wicket. I've never seen a wicket like that in my career, so
It's going to be quick and bouncy and a lot of grass here, so it should suit the quicker bowlers.
The strongest hint yet that second Test debutant Brett Lee will play his first at home.
If I was lucky enough to get the chance to play in Sydney, I think that would be a fantastic experience for me.
War rates Lee as the best thing for bowling since Shane Warne.
Got him! Well bowled! 300 Test wickets for Shane Warne.
Some of Warne's greatest moments have taken place on this ground, and even if it's not a spinner's pitch, War's tipping the leg spinner to break Dennis Lilly's Australian record of 354 Test wickets.
He's good enough to take the 5 wickets he needs to get them. I'd back him here to take those wickets. If we're allowed to back anyone. Yeah.
After finding form in Melbourne, Mark Waugh wants a century in his 100th Test.
I know Stephen made 90-odd against England here last year in his 100th Test, so I'd like to outdo him and get to the 100.
Meanwhile, Pakistan pace bowler Shoaib Akhtar vows he'll come back to international cricket after receiving a 1-month ban for throwing.
I can assure you I'll be all right within 3 weeks' time. I'll be playing against Sri Lanka and Pakistan.
Akhtar flies home tomorrow, where he'll work on remodelling his bowling action with former West Indian great Michael Holding. Andrew McKinlay, National 9 News.
And a century of Australian cricket will be celebrated in a unique way during tomorrow's Test, thanks to Steve Waugh's sense of history. The baggy green will be missing, replaced by a skull cap, similar to those worn at the turn of last century. The skull cap was worn by the Australian team in the first Test of the 1900s. Waugh came up with the idea of wearing the same cap for the first Test of the 21st century.
You've got to know where you've come from to know where you're going. I think that's important in sport, to know who's played before you and their traditions and what it's all about. And if you can pass it on, I think that's the way the team becomes really strong.
Modelling the cap, Waugh looked like an errant schoolboy.
Bit different, eh?
In later years, the much-loved baggy green, which had endured, particularly as a result of the Bradman era, superseded the skull cap. Still, Waugh had no trouble convincing his team for a one-off change tomorrow to mark the new millennium.
It's amazing, actually, that the skull cap seems to give the players sort of more character straight away when they wear it.
As long as it doesn't change the way they're playing right now. And Peter, less than 1,000 tickets to be sold for tomorrow's third Test, for the day one.
And if they go, live coverage from 11.
Yeah, and Happy New Year to you, son.
And to you and yours.
Okay.
Thank you, Ken. Well, those who prayed for the rain to hold off last night were well rewarded, with the only drizzle coming after the fireworks displays. The first day of the year 2000 was a pleasant but overcast one, a top of 21 degrees in the city, 23 in Liverpool. A shower or two forecast for tomorrow, 23 in the city, 24 degrees in Liverpool, Richmond and Gosford. On the synoptic chart, the low in the Tasman should head towards New Zealand, with winds easing along the coast. Looking around the country now, and showers forecast for Brisbane, but a fine one in Canberra, Melbourne, Adelaide and Hobart. Ahead for Sydney, a shower or two tomorrow, fining up on Monday, more showers Tuesday, before returning to finer weather during Wednesday. And that's National 9 News, this first day of the year 2000. Next, more of Channel 9's Millennium coverage with New Year's Eve in Los Angeles. I'm Peter Overton. Good night.